Parents, the following program is intended for people over the age of 13. If your kids are younger than that, please use the YouTube Kids app.
Welcome to Scary Stories, the channel that tells you scary stories.
Peter Bernard's Scary Stories for Adults.
Welcome to Scary Stories NYC. I'm Henrey Lee Dogman. Bigfoot is having his nails done in town. Today we got two brand new, never-before-heard Dogman stories. Each one scarier than the other one. Before we jump into that, let's thank today's executive producer, Tammy K. Thank you, Tammy K. We couldn't do it without you. If you'd like to be a Scary Stories executive producer like Tammy, just join our super secret paid subscribers club at peterbernard.com. You also get access to over 7 hours of scary, uncensored Dogman stories far too extreme to ever be told on this channel. All that and more at peterbernard.com. Now let's jump straight into our first story. This is allegedly true, and the person who sent it to us claims it happened some years back out behind the Wal-Mart in Milford, Pennsylvania. I would have no way of knowing if he's telling the truth or not, as I've only worked at the Wal-Mart up in Suffern, New York. So sit back, take a deep breath, get your Pennsylvania Dogman mood on, and get ready to be scared by a tale we call Dogman Canceled Our Smoking Break. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I worked at a Walmart once, but not for long. I couldn't take it very seriously, and I not only got myself fired, but I almost accidentally got the friend who recommended me fired as well. I was a bad influence in those days, but that was a really, really long time ago, and I've changed in all the time since then. Well, okay, actually, it wasn't really that long ago, but I swear I've changed a lot in that time anyhow. So, this Walmart is situated with a few other stores and a small prefab suburban town alongside a highway in the middle of a vast area of forest land. It's got everything you need within walking distance, basically, so it's got sort of a feeling of being a neighborhood, but at the same time, the forest surrounding it is really pretty wild, so it's also got this vibe of being a pioneer outpost in some sense. Or maybe I just felt that way because I got to feast my eyes on the most fiercely wild of all creatures of that forest, the Pennsylvania Dogman itself. So my friends at that job and I had this habit we got into of, as soon as the serious boss left for the night, we would leave the noobs in charge, then go outside by the trees and take a good long smoking break. It wasn't by the forest, but it was by a few trees, and on some nights, you could kind of hear the forest from there, or maybe it was crickets in that small row of trees closer to us. After all, why wouldn't crickets be in there? That's where we saw the Dogman. And that was kind of how it happened, too. We just saw him. He wasn't there, or at least we hadn't noticed him, and then we had, and we all focused on him and tried to understand what we were seeing. In the dark, it wasn't something we could figure out very easily. We thought it was a really tall man, but if it was, he was acting very weird, and we wondered if he was a psycho nut job. There were 3 or 4 of us, so a psycho nut job alone wasn't going to be enough to scare us back inside. We kept standing there, smoking and chatting, but watching him. Every so often, one of us would notice something else about him that we hadn't noticed prior, and they would mention it. No matter what other topics came up in conversation, we kept going back to talking about the big weird guy over in that patch of trees. Then, one of the guys we can call Alex started screaming like a woman, just like as if a woman was being attacked or something. His scream was so loud and so high-pitched, he nearly ripped my soul out of my body. When we looked to see what he was screeching about, we saw that the very tall figure was moving out of those trees and walking toward us. As he moved under the lights, I could see that he seemed to be covered in animal pelts, and his face looked horrible. It didn't look right at all. Someone had already run inside, and the other two of us had now joined Alex in screaming. I still didn't even understand what I was screaming about, but I was screaming. There was some kind of a caveman with a ruined face approaching. As horrified as I was, I couldn't tear my feet from the spot. I was frozen in place, staring wide-eyed at the man-thing lumbering in my direction. And then I could see that he wasn't wearing animal pelts. He was covered in fur. He had his own pelt, in other words. And his face? It wasn't a mask or a messed up human face. No, it was the face of some ferociously angry dog. But how does a dog head fit on a man's body? And since when is a man's body covered in fur? I screamed in horror and confusion, and I think at around that moment, my mind started screaming internally, and I fled the scene. Back inside, the noobs laughed at us, the way we were all panicked and emotional. They wanted to go outside and see what we had seen, but we told them not to, that it wouldn't be safe. This was hysterically funny to them, especially to this one guy, Eddie. He disobeyed us and opened the door to go look around where we had been smoking. I expected to hear him scream any second, but instead, he came back in, reporting that our boogeyman must have run away. They really kidded us that night, but I know what I saw, and I was careful from then on when I would take a smoke out back. Ever since the night that Dogman canceled our smoking break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with another scary Dogman story right after this important message from PQ Ribber.
You know what time is coming soon, don't you? The day of the wearing of the green skin. I'm inviting you to me St. Patrick's Day Dogman Party. The one and only Dr. Death St. Patrick's Day Scary Story Special. An extra long episode, and only us ghouls and ghosts and deceased individuals are invited. Oh, all right. You seem cool. You can come too. It all happens here on the Scary Stories NYC channel, Tuesday, March 17th. Feel free to arrive early. All my other guests are late.
Dogman wouldn't stop staring at me. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I have a story about encountering a dogman without even knowing that's what I had done. Not realizing at first, at least. I just thought he was an annoying dweeb, because Dogman wouldn't stop staring at me. My father had me come out and stay at his house when he went to Europe this winter with his new blonde girlfriend. Either she came back a redhead, or he brought back a different woman. But in either case, he's back living at the house, and I'm back in my apartment with my girlfriend. As I think back on my time out there, it seems so crazy that I feel I should write it down and send it to somebody. I was out at his place for 2 entire months, and the work I was doing at the time only took me between 2 and 6 or 7 hours a day to complete. So I found places out there to wander to and ways to enjoy being out in nature which isn't as frequent an opportunity when I'm living back in the city. There is a park bench just sort of very randomly placed near the side of an expressway near there. The bench faces the trees and away from the expressway and is far enough from the road not to smell like car exhaust. I developed a habit of sitting on that bench at all hours of the day and night. Since I worked freelance and made my own hours on about half of my days, I might take a break in the evening, late at night, in the morning. It was ever changing. I got to watch those trees blow in the wind at high noon and at midnight. I got to watch the light of the sundown hit them and watch the sun rise come up behind them. I came to appreciate the rows of them dancing in the breeze, and I was soon a fan of their particular brand of choreography. I felt like they were putting on command performances for me and me alone. And then, one night, I got the strange feeling that somebody was there with me and the trees. Someone off to my right, who I felt was staring at me. Do you know that feeling when you're certain someone is watching you? I turned as nonchalantly as I could in order to gain some peripheral vision of the area I felt this person was in. I could definitely see someone over there, standing by a tree. I didn't want to look in his direction, because if the guy intended to cause trouble, then looking directly at him was only going to draw his attention to me and possibly start a conflict. I hoped he would go away if I ignored him, so I pretended he wasn't there, but occasionally I kept turning my head so that I could see out of the corner of my eye if he was still there. He always still was. Well, I figured I had been asking for it, sitting out in public all these different times. This was the first time I'd been bothered at that random park bench, and I really had no right to complain. I laughed at how self-important I had been acting and calmed down for a while. But that annoying guy wouldn't leave. How rude is that? To just stare at me from behind and then keep staring at me from behind. I mean, it was beyond rude. It was something I was going to have to talk to this guy about. I was ready to explode. Well, if I was going to be stern with the guy, I'd better do it right. I put my most serious scowl on my face, puffed my chest out, and stood up, turning with a violent suddenness. "Hey, you," I shouted. "Stop staring." I forgot the rest of what I was going to say. It wasn't a guy, and it wasn't a lady either. It wasn't even human. I watched as this freak, this dog-headed freak thing with crazy eyes and its tongue hanging way out of its mouth, stood there looking idiotic and drooling. I mean, it stood there on its hind legs as though it were a man, and to some degree its posture was like that of an extremely unintelligent human being, or possibly highly intelligent ape, but it had a big old dumb-looking dog head, and the overall effect was like some kind of an inbred monster from out of a lost Lovecraft novel. It wasn't that, I know. It had to have been a natural animal, as it was not wearing clothes and showed no signs of having human culture, or any other kind of culture for that matter. This was a dumb animal, and it was likely a carnivore, judging by its large teeth. Unfortunately, it had decided to take an interest in me. I didn't know if he wanted to eat dinner at my place, or have me for dinner. I wondered if it would even matter in the case of this thing. You can't really make friends with a monster. Whenever I tell this story, I always get stuck at this part because people ask all sorts of specific questions about what the thing looked like. It was dark gray in spots and black in most places. Its fur, I mean, which was fairly long, about 3 or 4 inches all over. The snout was long And yes, the dog did exhibit eye shine when its face was in shadow. When it was not under the tree cover and the creature was lit by the orangey-colored street lights, the eyes looked super dark to me. I'm not a good judge of height, but I'm 5'11", and it was taller than I was. It was also very muscular, but extremely fast. The way it moved turned my stomach because it reminded me of how cockroaches move super fast between one location and another when they're hiding from the light. After this creature saw me get up off that bench and back away from it slowly, the thing just darted, lightning fast, off into the trees to my right and out of my line of vision. I couldn't see it anymore, but I could still hear it back there. I started doing the only thing I could do, walk home to my dad's place, keeping my eye on the trees and bushes in case something jumped out at me, trying to keep myself in well-lit places and hoping that other people would be around to keep that dogman too intimidated to try and ambush me. I had to walk along that forest for a good 10 minutes, and the thing was pacing me from inside those woods and out of sight. I could hear it matching me, step for step for step. It was maddening. I wanted to run, but I knew that showing signs of panic would activate the predator's hunting instincts, and he would be certain to treat me as his prey. I had to continue to act unafraid, as though I were the alpha in this situation. That's all dogs understand anyway, according to what I've been told. Are you the alpha, or are they? The way they treat you will be drastically different if they decide one way as opposed to the other. This dogman still hadn't seemed to have made up his mind about me, and he followed me all the way to the edge of that wooded area. Now, as I was about to cross the street and walk down a block lined on both sides with private homes, would the dogman dare to continue to follow me? Would it actually come out of the forest and take a stroll through suburbia? I was drenched in sweat. I had never been so nervous in my entire life. My heart was beating like a bass drum as I took a step out onto the black tar road. I turned around and glared at those woods. I looked at each tree, and then I looked at them all again. Then I checked for traffic both ways, and I ran home the rest of the way like a little kid who had just broken some old lady's window with my baseball. I don't think the dogman followed me, and I didn't feel like anyone was staring at me for the rest of the way home. When I got back, I ran a luxurious bubble bath using all the fancy soaps that my dad's new girlfriend had bought, and I started to feel back to normal after a while. I came downstairs humming, thinking about what I was going to prepare for dinner, when I got that same strange feeling all over again. Someone was watching me. I checked outside, but it was dark out there. I thought about throwing on the yard lights, but did I really want to see what was out there in the darkness? I checked to see that all the doors and windows were locked, even upstairs. Then I went down to the living room to watch some TV on Dad's giant television set. I still felt like I was being watched. I turned on Dad's stereo sound system and blasted the movie on the TV super loud. It still didn't make me feel any less vulnerable. All of the windows in the house looked like big, black eyes to me, and I felt like they were all staring in at me. Even pulling the curtains shut didn't make me feel better, as they were not very thick, and I still felt extremely exposed. I went upstairs and ended up watching TV in my dad's room because it was the only one with a lock on the door and thick curtains on the windows. I felt like I was still being watched anyway, and when I fell asleep, I had a dream that the dogman was in the closet and under the bed. That was not a fun night, and when I woke up a little before dawn, I just gave up and made some early coffee. It was while drinking that coffee and watching the sun come up out of the second-story window that I saw it. I saw the Dogman. It was there, in the trees, at the back of the backyard, and it was staring right up at the window I was standing behind. I went and got my cell phone, and I aimed it at the monster. I zoomed in as far as I could go, and I took a few snaps. It kinda looks like something is there, but you can't tell if it's a branch, or a tree, or what. I looked back and saw that he had gone, and then I took a second shot, but it still looks basically the same as the first shot. I really would have needed a much higher powered camera to catch the image from that distance in such a limited early morning light. If Dad asks me to house sit there again, I'm not sure I would really want to do it because of the Dogman. I know that sounds ridiculous because it only happened this one time, and there's a decent chance that even if I lived in my father's backyard to an age of 120, I'd probably never encounter a Dogman ever again. That's what my head tells me, at least. My gut tells me that the creature never really stopped being interested in me. I think it knows anything it wants to know about me, even though I know how crazy that sounds, and I can't even explain why I feel that or how it could know these things. I think, and again I know this might sound crazy, but I think that the creature studied me in person for as long as it needed to, in order to sort of get a lock on me. I don't know what part of me it got a lock on. Maybe it got a lock on my personal vibration or energy level or frequency. After that, I think it could probably just think of me and spy on me instantly. I guess it could spy on me back here in the city, too, but I don't think that's interesting to it. If I were to go back out to my father's house, though, I think it would take note that I was nearby. I don't know why it would, but I think it would. Or maybe I've just become paranoid since. Dogman wouldn't stop staring at me. And now, get ready for an all-new, completely uncensored, slightly bloody, and absolutely terrifying new Dogman story. Oh, wait. YouTube won't allow me to tell you stories like that on this channel. If you want to hear that, you're going to have to go to peterbernard.com and sign up for our paid subscribers club. You can choose any price you can afford for a 1-month subscription, and then every weekend, we tell you a story YouTube would never allow us to tell you on this channel. See you this Sunday for an all-new, very scary, completely uncensored Dogman story.
Come back for more scary stories.